Wait, come here. We've got to talk.
What? Well, are you serious?
Yeah, you have to tell me.
Well, I don't want to be here. I want to see the world. I want to go to Eastern part for university.
Oh, so your life is the worst now. Okay, you win.
So now you are mad. I just say what I want.
Well, you've got a great life.
I'm not very perfect. I'm sorry about that.
No one's asking you to be perfect. Just be a little bit more considerate, okay? Mom and Dad would never be able to afford your tuition.
There are loans and scholarships, okay?
But look at our brother. He can't even get a job and he graduated from Berkeley. And did you know that Dad's company's been laying people off? No, of course you didn't, because you've only been thinking about yourself.
How could you say that to me? I'm your sister, okay? Just think about me for a moment.
I can't even believe someone who can't even get their driver's license. So what you're going to do is go to a community college and then get a job at a grocery store, and that's going to be the rest of your life.
No. I don't want this talk. Bye.
It's a letter from Nancy. What can I do for her?
Hi, it's Nancy again. I don't really know what to say, but I have to say it. I might go crazy if I don't. Why does my sister always fight with me? She thinks I'm a good for nothing and useless. I'm expected to stay in this small city and work in the grocery store, and that will be not my life. How can she decide what's right for me? How can she judge me? You know that I'm far from perfect, but no one has given me a chance to change myself.
Dear Nancy, I'm happy that you share your life with me. Don't worry, I won't tell your secret to anybody. I understand you feel life is hard, and no one really understands you. Maybe it's better if I share some stories with you, which I sincerely hope will comfort you a little bit. Virginia Woolf lived in a patriarchal society where women were always in an inferior position. In this society, fathers held authority over women, children, and property. The only way to improve their situation, to get social and economic status, was to have an ideal marriage. Many girls received such education concerning marriage from their childhood. The duty of all boarding schools and tutors was to develop a so-called future ideal wife and mother. This kind of education deeply influenced their values, and many women were willing to stay at home and serve the family. The traditional education also had a great effect on women's employment. At that time, women as a symbol of family were not allowed to go to work. Even if some middle-class women went out for work, their career options were extremely narrow, only working as tutors or tailors. You can imagine how depressed and crazy a life that women lived. However, Virginia Woolf dares that to make her own choice and live in her own will. She writes those kitchen staff novels with the technique of stream of consciousness, which male readers and society didn't accept at all. In, in spite of that, she still persists in her own style, and now she's regarded as a famous feminist. Once she said in her book, A Womb of One's Own, Jane Austen and Emily Bronte wrote as women write, not as men write. What genius, what integrity, it might have required in face of all that criticism, in the midst of that purely patriarchal society, to hold fast to the things as they saw it without shrinking. If you think her story is so far from you, and you think it's not practical, then I want to share you the story of Annette Coligny. She points out that those so-called classical literary works in fact are decided by male readers' standard. Those kitchen things, novel written by women, which was neglected before now, come into people's eyes again. Our reading habits triggers us have a pronouncement to those books that we didn't read before and judge those books as trivial and boring stuff. Literary history is man-made and should be renewed with the development of times. I don't mean to let you make your decision right now to move out. I mean it's time that you should think about yourself instead of waiting for others' permission. You should figure out your merits and think about what you like. Once you have the idea in your mind, I hope you can persist in it. No one can predict or decide your life. Don't let others' pronouncements stick on your life. If you want to see the world, I think sometimes it's you that give yourself a chance. Don't be scared by anybody's criticism. Just do what you like.
Leonardo and the Philosophers focuses on how philosophers should explain aesthetics. Philosophy undertakes an attempt to transmute what we know and what we would like to know. Philosophies are characterized by the system of speculations, and there cannot be independent and substantially isolated questions. Valeri's time is a critical point in philosophy because exact and pertinent thoughts must recapture diversity, irregularity, and unexpectedness of bygone thoughts. Philosophers must re-establish the plurality and autonomy of the mind as a result of their own unity and sovereignty. Philosophers must legitimize the existence of what is considered error, recognize the vitality of the absurd, and the capacity of the contradictory. The existence of others is always disruptive to the magnificent egotism of the philosopher. There is a seemingly arbitrary issue of people's thoughts, feelings, and actions. There is also a difference in people's behavior and character, a diversity of decisions and attitudes towards preservation of the body and its possessions. There is also a variety of tastes, expressions, and creations of the sensibilities. According to Valeri, a philosopher must mediate the framing of the science and meaning of expressions and creations of emotions, both ethics and aesthetics. Ethics and aesthetics form symmetrical wings which the ego holds passion, action, emotion, and invention captive. Once he exhausts considering God, self, time, space, matter, and categories and essences, the philosopher returns to man and his works. The philosopher has invented truth, the good, and the beautiful. Efforts of the intellect can no longer converge towards a spiritual limit or the truth. Metaphysics now will be divided and removed from the only real knowledge, and ethics and aesthetics will now be distorted into problems of legislation, statistics, history, and physiology. Philosophic aesthetics is separate from artistic thoughts because it comes from a way of thinking that sees itself as foreign to the arts, and feels that it is a different species from poets or musicians, but it is not so. Works of art are the result of active and industrious intelligences going blindly towards a principle which philosophy can possess the vision or the understanding of. Valeri states, "One cannot summarize a poem as one summarizes a universe." Because to summarize a thesis is to retain the essence of it. To summarize a work of art is to lose its essence. The philosopher cannot easily understand how the artist passes from form to content and content to form. Form comes to an artist with the meaning the artists wish to give it. If ethics could exist, the arts would fade before it, Valéry says. Philosophy took to overcome the artist and to try to explain what the artist feels and what he does, but the opposite happened. Valéry believes that the only thing that can save metaphysics is aesthetic interpretation. Criticism has led art or aesthetics to lose imaginary powers over events and persons, and sculpture became free and became itself. As life represented in art or sculpture became weaker, the idol became beautiful. The philosopher must then use what he has acquired through discipline. Valéry ends the passage in our book by saying that Leonardo da Vinci is the supreme example of knowledge of changes between the arbitrary and the necessary. An Introduction to Myths, the study of religion. Other amateurs who claim to belong to other disciplines have tried to move into studying religion. The anthropological study of religion started with men who were psychologically oriented, but not necessarily able to keep up with the progress of psychological research and theory. The study of myths has become chaotic and widely interpreted in conflicting ways. Mythology appears to be contradictory in two ways. 1. It seems like anything is likely to happen over the course of a myth. And 2. This seemingly arbitrary nature is similar in myths collected from different religions. The role of myths. One cannot compare a linguist to a mythologist. Myth is language, so to be known, myth has to be told. To preserve the myth, we must be able to show it is the same as language and something completely different from it. Strauss alludes to and builds upon Saussure's ideas of langue and parole. And he also says that the myth is historical and ahistorical. Myth is in the realm of parole as well as langue. Myth is the part of language where the idea of to translate is to betray reaches its lowest truth value. Poetry cannot be translated without some serious distortions, and myth can be preserved even through the worst translation. Even if we have no knowledge of the language or the culture of origin of the myth, a myth is still myth to any reader in the world. Substance does not lie in style. Strauss makes 3 claims. 1. If there is a meaning to be found in mythology, it cannot reside in the isolated elements which enter into the composition of a myth, but only in the way those elements are combined. 2. Although myth better belongs to the same category as language, being as a matter of fact only part of it, language in myth exhibits specific properties. 3. Those properties are only to be found above the ordinary linguistic level. That is, they exhibit more complex features than those which are to be found in any other kind of linguistic expression. Consequences of the claims if granted. 1. Myth, like the rest of language, is made up of constituent units. 2. These constituent units presuppose the units present in language when analyzed on other levels, such as phonemes, morphemes, and sememes. How then can we identify these gross constituent units of myths? Strauss begins with the traditional approach of analyzing each myth individually, breaking down the story into the shortest possible sentences, and writing each sentence on an index card with a number corresponding to the way the story unfolds. This method is ultimately unsatisfactory. Instead, Strauss proposes creating columns containing relations belonging to the same bundle of ideas or units. This results in several 2-dimensional charts, each dealing with a variant, to be organized in a 3-dimensional order. Newer versions of myths may not affect the units, as there is no one true version of the myth. Every version belongs to the myth. By using a structural analysis, it becomes possible to organize all the known variants of a myth into a set forming a kind of permutation group. The 2 variants placed at the far ends being in a symmetrical though inverted relationship to each other. Once we can organize variants into a group, we can then create a law for the group. Strauss attempts to compare different creation myths across Native American tribes, Greeks, and Europeans. Conclusions. The function of repetition is to render the structure of the myth apparent. 2. The states are not absolutely identical. A theoretically infinite number can be created. 3. Man has always been thinking well, but the improvement lies in the discovery of new areas to apply its powers. End. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye!
Mythology and ideology. There are two characters in this short video, Nana and Xiao Xiao. They are about 10 years old. Nana just moved to the US. They write emails to each other. Dear Xiao Xiao, I have promised to write a letter to you after I settle down in my new home. This is my first week in the US. I really miss you, my friend, and I live a happy life here. Don't worry about me. Do you recover from the loss of your dog? I hope you feel better now about Lucky's departure. Lucky will have another good master in some place. He knows that you love him so much. He will choose you as his master in his next life. My new school is so beautiful, and the teachers are nice to me. I like Mrs. Smith so much. She's pretty and patient. She looks like the goddess on the moon. I still need time to catch up my classmates here. However, if I study hard, I can get a good result later. Tomorrow I have an important test. I ask the God in heaven to bless me. The animations here are so different from China's. There are many superheroes, beautiful princesses, and cute animals in them. But Monkey King is still my hero. I don't believe my mom's joking that I jumped from a stone now, but I like he's brave and smart. I still want to know what happens to Monkey King after his master is captured by the diamond spider. Does he succeed rescuing his master? The master must be able to survive. A good man with a good heart deserves good rewards. I'm looking forward to your reply. Your best friend, Nana. I want to share my personal ideas about this letter and what philosophical ideas can be seen. Why does the author of Journey to the West let Monkey King born from a stone? I think that mythology has a great influence. In mythology, heroes are born from a chaotic lump, a round ball, and a stone. Pangu, the first hero in the China's ancient myth. He creates the sky and the earth, sacrifices his body to be the sun, the moon, rivers, and the trees.哪吒, a general, kills demons and protects people. He is born from a round ball, just like when he grew up, he looks like that. And the Monkey King, he's born from a stone. People are subjected by mythology and ideology. Chinese people believe karma and afterlife. What goes around comes around. If you study hard, you will pay off. There are also old sayings like that. If you do bad things, bad ghosts will knock at your door at midnight.
I'm wondering if the idea of Monster Inc. came from China, it would be a ghost story. It is also common that some Chinese people say in my next life, maybe my last life or something like that. People may not take this kind of words seriously, but undoubtedly, this habit or pet phrase is affected by China's ancient ideology and mythology. Taking the moon as an example, the moon appears a lot in Chinese culture. Many myths are related to the moon, like a beautiful goddess living in the moon, or the eclipse of the moon is explained as a dog in heaven eating the moon. This kind of strange stories reflects ancient people's imagination and curiosity about nature. Nowadays, the moon can be seen as loneliness, for that goddess lives alone on the moon. But it also has positive meanings. Chinese people eat moon cakes in Mid-Autumn Festival because the round cake is like the round moon. The full moon symbols family reunions. Do you think there are other ideas different from your mode of thinking? We pursue for science to solve problems in our shared world, the world. However, everyone's world is different. Your world, my world, and his world are totally different. In this sense, mythology and ideology are of great significance. From Karl Marx's base and superstructure, the importance of them can be seen clearly. Other theories also express their opinions about ideology. On the one hand, according to Nietzsche, every culture that lost myth has lost its natural healthy creativity. The force of imagination of Apollonian dream are saved by myth from indiscriminate rambling. On the other hand, Claude Lévi-Strauss holds that a myth is a set of relations that attempts to resolve in the structure an apparently unresolvable cultural problem. Last but not the least, myth also gives people a collective unconsciousness. It makes us live in a subjective truth. Myth can be seen as one of resources of ideology. According to Louis Althusser, ideology interpellates individuals as subjects.
Dear Professor, I'm a student whose major is English literature. This semester, I have a class which is about literary theory. One of my classmates did a presentation which was about Walter Pater and Laozi. I think it is really interesting to know more about Chinese philosophy and even to compare it with Western philosophy. But I have little knowledge about Chinese philosophy. Can you help me?
Dear Sarah, Chinese philosophy originated from the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. It has many different schools. Here, I will only introduce you 3 major schools. They are Confucianism, Taoism, and Mohist. Confucius is a representative figure in Confucianism. His theory is more about morality. The Analects of Confucius is a representative work of his thoughts. Teachers in China will teach the Analects of Confucius to their students. It will teach them how to be a good person. His main thoughts, like we should treat our parents with reverence, we should obey them when we are young, care for them when we are old, mourn them when they die, and make huge sacrifice in memorizing their afterlife. This is also called filial piety. He also believes that benevolence, ritual propriety, righteousness, wisdom, integrity are the 5 constant virtues. Confucius also thinks about the relationship between ruler and subject. Let the ruler be a ruler, the subject a subject, a father, and a son. It means we should be obedient to honorable people. Lao Tzu is a representative figure in Taoism. His major work is Dao De Ji. Wu Wei is his main thought, which doesn't mean that doing nothing. It's letting things take their own course. His philosophy tends to look at harmony between people and this world under the guidance of Tao. Mo Zi is a representative figure in Mohism. He argued strongly against Confucianism and Taoism. His philosophy emphasized self-restraint, self-reflection, and authenticity rather than obedience to ritual. By reflecting on one's own successes and failures, one attains true self-knowledge rather than mere conformity to ritual. Mo Zi exhorted people to lead a life of asceticism and self-restraint, renouncing both material and spiritual extravagance. Western philosophy originated from ancient Greece. It has gone through the ancient, medieval, modern, and contemporary period. Plato appears to be the founder of Western political philosophy with his Republic and Laws, among other dialogues, providing some of the earliest extant treatments of political questions from a philosophical perspective. Plato is an idealist who sought to imagine the ideal state. Along with Plato, Aristotle is considered the father of Western philosophy. He is a realist who sought to design a government that would actually work. China has a vast land. Agricultural civilization is deeply rooted in Chinese culture, so Chinese people attach great importance to the harmony between nature and human being. Chinese philosophers also think about the questions that how human being and nature can live in harmony. In ancient China, the relationship between people is like a pyramid. The emperor and his minister, and then ordinary people. So we attach great importance to the relationship between people. However, in Western philosophy, philosophers tend to separate the ontological world and phenomenal world. Despite of the differences, we can also find some similarities, like Walter Pater and Lao Tzu both talks about no action. Mo Zi brings up the concept of universal love, meaning caring for all people equally. This is considered as the Eastern version of utopia. This is all I want to share with you. I hope my explanation can open one door for you. If you can do more research in this area, I believe you will have more interesting findings.